Hey, everybody, this is Liz joining you as usual. Actually, not as usual. I am in DC today. So I am on, I sure hope I'm saying this right, Nakachank land. If somebody knows better, please do correct me. And if you want to know whose native lands you're on, you can go to native-land.ca and check it out. They've got a map of the entire world. It's pretty cool. And I'll put that in the show notes, as I always do. I'm so glad that you're here. Want to tell you a couple of things. If you are interested in learning more about the sacred feminine from beyond this podcast, please do check out my book, Home to Her, Walking the Transformative Path of the Sacred Feminine. It's available wherever you buy your books. It's also available on Audible if you want to hear me read to you. Go to my website, hometoher.com, and check out what's going on there. I am rolling out small group experiences on a regular basis. And right now there's also an on-demand course that I've taught live. It's called Home to Her Story, Home to Your Story. And kind of takes the content from the book and just goes at a deeper level and really helps you figure out how this relates to your own life. Yeah, I think I've got more to say, but you know what? It'll come up later, or I'll put it in the show notes. So let's do this thing. All right, so I want to tell you about my guest today. And if you've listened, one thing that might be helpful to do if you're just joining the podcast now and you're really interested in this subject is go back and listen to the podcast that I did a couple episodes back called The Future of Home to Her. The podcast has been going for 5 years now, and there's a little bit of a direction shift that I've been doing. And one of the things that's been really clear for me is feeling into how does this feminine energy help us show up in the world as it is today, because we have to function here. We've chosen, I believe, we've chosen to be alive at this particular moment in time for a reason, and acknowledging the inequities and railing against it, which I like to do on the regular, is very important. And I'm part of it. I got to exist in it. And so you'll see and hear, I think, in these conversations, some shifting in my own awareness of this and wanting to bring in expanded voices who are experiencing the feminine in different ways than maybe I've looked at it in the past. And so my guest today, I met, I don't know, a year or so ago at a networking event in Central Virginia, which is where I live. And loved her energy so much. Some of you, if you've listened to the show for a while or you read my book, you know that I come from a business background and I have some passion for that. I stepped away from it so I could do this work with the sacred feminine for a long time, but that energy has always been there. My guest today, she reminded me of that fire in the belly that I had when I was in that world. And I felt like she was doing it in this really beautiful feminine way, like both those things were present. And I was like, I want that. I want to get near that. I want some of that. I want to remember like all of that, like how that felt, because I was in that world, but I wasn't holding the feminine in any kind of embodied way. So yeah, when I started thinking about this different direction of the show, I knew right away I wanted to have her on. So I'm so excited she's here. Let me go ahead and introduce her to you now. And this is like maybe in 103, 4 episodes. I think this may be my favorite bio ever. So here we go. Rebecca Korn is a former professional ballerina turned pre-med student who pirouetted out of an operating theater and onto Wall Street after a gut-wrenching discovery that her husband was having an affair with her best friend. Faced with the financial fallout of betrayal, Rebecca made a vow. No woman in her orbit would ever be blindsided by money or the lack of it again. Trading point shoes for portfolio theory, she rose through the male-dominated ranks of wealth management, where she now advises and coaches high-achieving women on how to build unshakable sovereign wealth. Her clients have collectively generated 5 new millionaires in 5 years, with a 6th on the horizon. Rebecca's methodology fuses the somatic intelligence of ballet, the analytical rigor of medicine, and the strategic cunning required to outplay legacy patriarchal systems. She teaches women to balance feminine flow with iron fist strategy, wielding intuition as data and data as power. Oh my God, I love that so much. When she isn't engineering financial breakthroughs, you'll find Rebecca dissecting Jungian archetypes, leading leadership retreats that feel like art installations, or dancing barefoot under a starlit sky. Proof that wealth is an inside-out state of being. She lives by the credo, we can't always change the game overnight, but we can master its rules today and write new ones tomorrow. Rebecca is joining us from her home in Charlottesville, Virginia. Rebecca, I am so glad that you are here. Thank you for being with me today. It's finally happening. Hooray.
It's finally happening. I'm truly honored, Liz, and thank you so much for having us. We actually might have our 6th and 7th millionaire at the end of this year. I don't know who's they're in a head-to-head right now, and really, really exciting time in the world. So thank you so, so much. And funny how a week can change that.
That's amazing. Oh, I love that. Okay, well, yes, so and I'll make sure I put in how to follow you and everything on social media because I assume that would be big news once that happens, so people can stay up to date. Yeah, well, so I usually start with talking about people's spiritual backgrounds, and, um, I think what I wanna ask you and there's, like, a curiosity factor there. I often when we think about the feminine as a spiritual principle, I don't know about you, but, like, it wasn't present in my life, and so I enjoy hearing about, like, was that present for people growing up? But I also think I kinda just, Rebecca, wanna weave in, like, any other details that are sort of relevant to where you are now, like, from your upbringing. Yeah, so can we start there?
Sure. I was raised in a way by I would say my grandmother was probably the biggest magnifier of my feminine energy. She was a wild woman, holy. We grew up in rose gardens on her farm. And we trained wild horses. We break wild horses, but one of the things that she always honored was that a wild horse always had the wildness within her. My grandfather, parallel to that, was one of the first feminists that I've ever met in my entire life. And I would always have these like pushback points of, but I'm not a boy. But I kind of wanted to be at a certain point when I was in my childhood. I had four brothers and there were dynamics within that space that I was a little jealous of some of the things that they could do that I couldn't do. Like I just wasn't in that space. He would break apart shovels to give me the opportunity instead of me hitting it on my head because I was shorter than my brothers. And so he would often just remind me that while the boys could conquer by force, I could conquer by resonance, either in the ways that I would connect with a horse or I would connect with the rose gardens. And that was a beautiful space. I was never harnessed in religion too strictly until later in my life. When my mother found religion, she kind of connected a little too much to it to a point where I dove into ballet and compensation of that and always kept that very free space within myself. So I was always a very spiritual child. I always spoke to the other side in ways that people didn't really understand. And it wasn't shamed and it wasn't blamed in any way. It was more of like, that's Rebecca. Like she has something about her. And my grandmother would always just allow that to be my freedom and my intuition. It wasn't something that was pushed down or tried to be harnessed in any way. So being able to be full throttle in that space, following my divorce, I became very masculine for a period of time. And it was a way to kind of shelter myself, but also create a likeness inside of the financial institution. Because one of my grandfather's first responses when I got into finance was, that's for boys, right?
Mm,
And I looked at him and I said, well, good thing that you raised me in an understanding that they conquer by force, but I can conquer in this space. So I'll look and play for a period of time in that arena until I earn my salt. And that's what he did. And so in a lot of ways, being able to understand these sides of myself very freely was the biggest gift from universe. I feel very, very deeply that between studying with Clarissa Pinkolas Estes and other pioneers in our time that have been such forces of magnitude. It's been such a development on the back end of what I do. It's not something I lead in with anymore. They can feel it when they meet me.
mhm,
If it's right for them, they will find it.
mhm.
So
Well, and it sounds like tell me if I've got this right, but it sounds like maybe that because I wanna talk about, like, what the feminine is to you and how you understand the sacred feminine and the feminine, like, I wanna pull that apart, but what I'm hearing you saying is almost like you had the understanding or sort of the feel of both of these things growing up, which is to me just a that I'm not envious, but I admire that because that's not something that I had. But is that accurate to say that you felt like you sort of had an understanding of these things and they were supported in your environment from the get-go?
always. I mean, I think in many ways the feminine is something that was celebrated in my grandparents' culture. They were Greek and came from Spain. So, I mean, Spain and Austria. So there were certain layers there that were integrated in a very European way. Actually, even now when I travel to Europe, I often am asked where I come from. And I often then respond with, I have no idea. Where do you come from? because whether we are here, whether we are there, doesn't identify where we come from. We are through this body, we are through this experience, and I've always had a very sage understanding of that.
Mm.
I was very much blessed with that. I did study for a period of time, very deeply, the sacred feminine. I became obsessed with it for a period of time, and really wanted to get into the nuance of so much more of what had been taught by a lot of the leaders in the feminine space, more so for myself than any other extraction.
Right.
Yeah, that
Well,
was.
yeah, no. Can you tell me about that? Like, how did that experience of sort of grow? Because there's a way of like maybe recognizing that feminine energy is being supported. Did you know that? Did you have any understanding of the sacred feminine growing up or exposure to that, or was that something that came up for you later in life? How did that work?
Yes, I would say the the way that my grandmother would walk through life was very much in accordance of her own understanding with the sacred feminine. It was so effortless, but also um fiery. It wasn't submissive, it wasn't passive. It was a way of her understanding of receiving the world and the ways that it was pouring into her, but at the same time this fiery side of her that I oftentimes don't see as often from feminine, like sacred feminine leaders. Sacred feminine leaders tend to be a little bit more tiptoey sometimes with certain things. It's very interesting for me to observe that, whereas that fire is definitely part of the feminine. And so when I do find somebody that is enriched in the feminine, like yourself or others in that space, that fiery side is definitely something that shows up. But I think whether she was following the sacred feminine proper or not, I don't hold that. It was more of a full throttle discovery later that I ended up diving into, more to clarify, like, where did she get this? Like, how
Mhm.
did she come across this? For a period of time, she dove into Kabbalah, and I think that's probably how, she wove into those spaces, because she was never going to believe that something was off limits for her. She would always find a way to get to it, which is part
Mm.
of the feminine. I mean,
Totally.
yeah, I think it's a really interesting space to just kind of observe within myself. And whether you're reading books or you're just immersing yourself into it from curiosity and understanding of how you'd like to develop, it's really important. But when you're with a very masculine space within finance for a period of time, I will tell you there's a part of yourself that just feels quenched to dive back into the sacred feminine and really learn some of that stuff and the richness that it has beholden.
Yeah, and was that around the time period when you? Because I do want to hear like there's like a heck of a nugget there you drop about your marriage ending and this commitment that you made to yourself and to help other women. But was that around that time when you sort of started seeking the more of the feminine because you recognized its absence, or like how did that play out for you?
Oh, not yet. No. So first, in the wake of my divorce, I ended up homeless for a period of time. This is about, gosh, this is a long time ago. It's probably about 17 years ago. And I was so embarrassed that this had happened to me from an ego standpoint. I was like, this never should have happened. I sat down with a financial advisor with my husband weeks before all this came to a head. And I was never stupid with money. And so I shouldn't have been in that scenario, with air quotes. I shouldn't have been. And so I just applied to med school. I was on a path. I was very decided. I knew bullishly where I was going. And I revolted against the universe for the ways that she hijacked my plans. I mean, I was somebody that graduated high school at 14 because I knew that I was going to be a professional ballet dancer. I was always a very spiritual child in the ways that I knew where I was going. And for universe to rip the path out from underneath me, I mean, this was something that, also to give perspective to, sacred feminine was not a conversation at that stage in the world, really. And so I went to my grandfather kind of with like my tail between my legs and was horribly embarrassed because um how could I make that how could I screw this up so badly? Where I had $21 in my bank account and I was living out of my car and I had no place to go. Really, I had less though because I was pulled over on my way back to Pennsylvania. So I was like -60 or -70 $70 because speeding ticket. And the police officer had no empathy, like absolutely none, which was wild because I have two undercover cops in my family. And I was like, here, I'm like a member of all of the things. I think this means something and I can't think straight. I just left. And he was like, absolutely not. So understanding that growth and that creativity and the transformation when I brought that to my grandfather and he gave me grace was really meaningful. At that time, he though said, here's $20. Maybe you can find a nice outfit to go interview at some places and find a job. And $20, even 17 years ago, wasn't going to get me an interview outfit. I mean, I was like, Gramps, what?
I'm not even sure they cover you at Goodwill.
I had to choose still between food and clothing. And he's like, I'll see you in a couple days though. You'll figure it out. So he wasn't one to solve anything in the chaos that was happening. And he wasn't one that I could go to and say, save me.
Yeah.
He was one that fully believed that me as an individual could figure out what the next solve was, but he wasn't going to spoil me or take it away. And that I think was a great power because, you know, when you align with cycles and you understand that there are seasonal changes, when I came back to him a couple weeks later, and said to him, I got a position at a financial institution. He's like, kid, that's made for boys. That's a man's world. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I was very shocked at that response. I remember that, but I also felt very challenged by that response. He'd never said anything like that to me before. Like that's a man's world or that's not for you or anything in that space. He was, like I said, one of the biggest feminists I'd ever met before in my life. My grandmother passed at this point times 10 years. And I remember sitting at my desk and my finance career in the first day. And I looked right next to me, and the name tag right next to me was Sylvia. And my grandmother's name was Sylvia. And I was like, hey, Grams, we got this, right? I became fast friends with the woman that was working there. And she was from Romania, of course. Just like these synchronicities that were happening. But I was so in this bulletproof tank of survival, as any woman is in the wake of a divorce. And, you know, when I ran my finance career, fast forward to this, I ran my finance career for about 8.5 years. And we ended up being one of the top 5 female firms in the entire East Coast. I beat out New York. I was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Very, very small market comparatively. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But how did I do it? I really just centered in my ability to receive people and listen to them. And one of my managing directors said to me, he goes, you know, we've never had records beat the way that you're beating records in 65 years. But the only other person that beat these records 65 years ago was also a woman. And I said, I'm not surprised. He was. And so I said to him, I was like, you know, the way that you train people is in like a linear progression. And I just do not do that. I require seasons of rest, but I also know how I can throttle. And as a professional ballet dancer, that was a physical throttling. In finance, it was a mental and physical because you were hitting door knocking, showing up at places, cold calling, doing whatever you needed to do. And so, you know, in that stage, very masculine. When I exited finance, I decided I only wanted to work with women for a period. Being so entrenched in the masculine, I felt like I needed to detox. So,
Yes.
that was the season of full feminine immersion. And that was really beautiful. But it also took away, in a way, some of the understanding with the dynamic of the masculine and the feminine. So the feminine emphasizes this cyclical, this embodied, this understanding of seasons, this receptivity, this sisterhood. And in a way that was quite powerful, but being able to recognize also there's power in the masculine supporting the feminine is a beautiful thing as well. And so in my feminine teachings in the very beginning, I was very organic and felt so comfortable in that space. And even in dating and in that season, it was very interesting because I had connected with somebody who I thought was going to be my king, my dynamic of the yang. And I had this feeling, this intuition based like dream that felt like an astral projection of me in another house with another man. And I woke up and I knew that we were ending, and I had full trust in it. I did not fight it. There was pain, of course, heartbreak and pain, of course, as it gets worse and worse as you get older. But I wasn't wanting to force or push outcomes. And I knew that this understanding that felt so real came from my angels, or came from the other side in a way that was like, I need to trust this. And so that's where I stepped into more of a 50-50 balance of the masculine and the feminine, really trusting this dynamic. So it was definitely an evolution, to answer your question.
So you said so many good things here. Like I'm like, oh, which thread am I going to follow first? But one of the things that, because this is the one that's present right now, one of the things that I think that you said to me the last time we met up in person, and it really resonated with me on a personal level, and also from what I've heard other women say, is that sometimes when we find the feminine, the sacred feminine, first, it's like you use the word quenching, right? Like it's like we're dying of thirst and we didn't know that this was the thing that we needed. Like we're drinking salt water or something. We're like, oh my God. And then you find like the real water and you're like, oh my God. Or it's like a buffet of food and you're like, I just need to eat this because I didn't get exposed to it my whole life. Right. But I know for me, in the same way that you named, when I got on this path, I sold my company. I completely checked out of my professional network. I was like, I'm done. I can't even touch this because at the time I was experiencing that work as toxic itself and that environment as toxic. And there's some truth to that, right? Like there's the feminine is not there and it can really squash your soul. But I think what happened is I almost became afraid of that part of me that loves spreadsheets and to-do lists and like and can be incredibly linear because I was afraid it was going to take over me. And you said something to the effect of, I see women when they find the feminine. I don't remember the word, but this is how I'm picturing in my head. They get kind of squishy or just like, like, because the feminine is emergent. It is the holistic thing. And so we can just get kind of lost in that space, I think. And then we're like, wait, how do I move forward? Like, what do I do now? Like, I'm just here. I'm receiving messages, but I don't know. And so I feel like you're right? And I feel like you're kind of speaking to like your own evolution with that, as you were describing. But
Mhm.
I wonder if you could say a little bit more about that, and also if you see this in your clients and how you know
Absolutely.
how you kind of help people navigate that, and how you did it yourself to be like, wait, how do I hold all this? Because it's a lot to hold, and especially in a paradigm that is fundamentally patriarchal, we do have to hold tight to the feminine because there's so many forces that tell us not to, right?
So my partner right now is a neurologist, and the woo is like something that is so far away from him, right? He is Mr. Science, Mr. Structure. And it's so funny because that's such an insightful question, because in terms of leadership, I see the toggling for women when they either find the feminine initially or partner with somebody who is very strategic and scientific, right? So they'll flood almost into that space of wanting to be not codependent, but also like infiltrated into the ways that their partner thinks. And I think that creating some ways that you flow is very, very important, kind of like a riverbank that allows water to flow without stagnating. There's different sections off to the side that she still kind of dances in differently, but she's still the water. She's still in that space of understanding for her. And so I definitely do see the ways that a lot of my clients, when they first find the feminine, they would rather be almost like in one of those side pools and don't take me out. Don't touch me. I
Yeah.
feel so relieved for the first time in my life.
Yes.
And I feel safe here, that there's almost this fear of touching the masculine because it feels like if I touch it again, how do I know I can trust myself with it?
Yeah.
So I think that part of understanding that not every feeling needs to be fully dove into, which the feminine understands, but she also feels so replenished in a way, hydrated in a way. Again, like you're saying, in terms of, oh my God, was I drinking salt water this whole time? Don't take me back. Like, if I taste any salt, oh my God, I might just shrivel up at the thought of that. And so, developing the skill of asking, because it really is a skill of asking, what is the sensation, the emotion, the insight that's coming up for me? And how is it serving me in this space? Do I need to navigate that right now, or do I have the space to discern when I'd like to dive into that fully? This is a really important piece of the dynamic because a lot of my ladies, when they first come to me, they don't have a structure to their week. There's almost like this desire to just place an appointment wherever they want to place an appointment. I love making millionaire clients, right? This is something that is a passion of mine. But one of the things I find is that you have to have this balance of understanding where the container is fully throttled, right? And where the container is something that is free. So, one of my first questions is, which day in the week do you have the most flexibility? Why? Why did you choose that day? Like, why is that important to you? Some are a Monday vibe, some are a Thursday vibe, some are a Wednesday vibe, some are a Friday vibe. And they don't necessarily have the reasoning for it, but there's always a day, and it is their feminine trying to crack out and allow for the spaciousness to really think and be. Because the universe and God or the divine, or however you look at this, is not going to take the space to speak to you between meetings for 15 minutes. But the ways that the feminine looks at what she brings into the world, that is such a privilege. I find that it is such a beautiful thing to be needed. It's a beautiful thing to have this gift and to pour it into other people. But I'm also not just this vessel of pouring. Like, I don't, no thanks. So the days that I go into nature, I just lay inside of a river, or I am phone off, reset, and just deliciously diving in, is the space where I hear the divine
Yeah.
and I can receive her.
Yes.
I can't do that if I'm always throttled.
Yes.
So my days don't look the same as my masculine leader counterparts. I'm one of the only female agencies that create $1 million clients. And I appreciate that, but I also hate that,
Yeah.
because part of that tells me that some of the other women that are in this space are either just toggling to look like the guys, or not even aware of the power the feminine holds. Because when I come back from a day that I've been laying in the river or being in the forest, first of all, my man still doesn't understand. He's like, "Were you in the forest? I couldn't find you for like the last 12 hours." Yeah, I was. Hi. So I think that being able to process that intuitive exploration, the understanding of how to cultivate your creative visioning, that's powerful. It's something that's beneficial too.
I'm so glad that you use the word power, and that's something that really there's so many threads. I'm like, oh my God, I can already tell we're not gonna have time to do it all. It's gonna be fine. But like something that's really gone forward for me in like this portal of divorce that I have moved through over the last like year and a half or so, like the separation and divorce. It's so, oh my God, what an initiation for women, right? In so many ways. But it really got me thinking about my work and my experience with the sacred feminine in different ways as well. And one of the things that's come really clear is that, like, for me, I was always a spiritual seeker. And so it doesn't surprise me that the sacred feminine came into my life very specifically in a sacred spiritual nature. Like, that's how I wanted to work with her energetically. And I still do. And she is everything. She's all the things. She's not like the God that sits up on a cloud and made it and then removed herself. She is every single thing, right? And so she's present in our work and in our day-to-day lives. And so it really got me thinking about, like, well, what does that look like? And it really, to me, is about power, like sourcing it within ourselves, but doing it in a really different way than that linear patriarchal paradigm that we are given. And so this, I think, is so important that you're speaking to, is that actually, if you, because I said, am I going to frame it in a negative or a positive? If you are labeling all of this woo, like, oh, you're talking to guys, or oh, you're going out in the woods, or you are cutting yourself off from this entirely different source of power that you can harness to work smarter and to show up as the most authentic version of yourself and to find joy. Like, it's life changing. And the trick is to figure out how to balance them, right? But not to banish that. And it really is so different imagining your life holding space for that, along with all the to-do shit that you gotta do, right? Like to get your work done or like feed your children or like all the things. But if we put it at the same level, in the same level of importance, and maybe even more, I don't know. I'm feeling like I want to hear what you have to say about this, but letting the feminine lead and then building the container around her so that she can lead is,
Precisely.
yeah, is the key. Yeah.
Precisely. Yes, because here's the thing. Sacred timing is learning to recognize that there are genuine cycles that you have that are uniquely yours, just like your fingerprint. And so some people say, well, it's always my Monday or it's always my Thursday. That's great. But it doesn't mean that that Thursday or that Monday always looks the same. My dear, if you feel that you are procrastinating and that is plaguing you and you feel called, it's not or it's not am I honoring my feminine or am I doing these things? Right? Because the doing and the functioning and the structure is the masculine. But the more structured that I am, the more that my feminine can flow. And
Yes.
so just because I have a Thursday where I have spaciousness, this happened this morning. I had like this foot surgery. I got out of it. I had this divine feeling that I needed to call this person. I haven't spoken to him in 2 years. I just called him. I'm listening. I hear you. I feel this. First, I stop and I say, okay, hold on a second. Is this just my foot hurting because I just had this foot surgery? Like, or is this due to your adrenaline? Like, what's coming up? And so I sat in my car for a period and I said, okay, let me speak to you. Let me find out what's coming up here. And I just had this feeling. And I call him up and he's like, Rebecca Korn, I was just thinking about you this morning. Of course.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I already know.
Yes.
But if I silence that and say, well, it's my Thursday and I'm supposed to be in this like beautiful, like breathable space, I am not honoring all that the divine is calling me for.
Yeah.
Is that responsible of me? And I think of the divine like my grandmother. My grandmother she had a fire to her, right? If
Yes.
you ignored her in a particular way, she'd find a way to also ignore you in something too. And I'm not saying that I'm doing it just because I feel fear in any way. The sacred feminine is such a beautiful, playful spirit. I mean, she is a force, but the one thing she is not powerful. Excuse my double negative, right? The feminine cycles have this natural completion point too. There
Yeah.
is understanding that I don't have to play by a specific rule or anything like that. It's just this understanding of like, I know when to dive deep and I know when to swim to the surface and I'm going to listen.
Yeah, the word that's coming up for me is emergence, which is one of the aspects of power that I love to talk about with the feminine, which is not having to have the linearity. And even, like we can have a goal, right? Like if your goal is like, I want to get my business to $1 million, or if my goal was to like, well, I'm gonna write this freaking book and I'm gonna finish it. And I want to do it by the end of the year because I want to get a book deal of like that's all, that's all well and good. But then this like so that's the container, right? Like that's the but then the emergence is allowing the space for the messages to show up for the one day, like I'm gonna sit down and write for 6 hours because it's all flowing. For the next to be like, okay, today's not the day that I'm gonna write, or whatever it is. And like learning to trust the emergence is so big too. And I think of a lot of this, and I wonder if this resonates with you too, as like muscles that have atrophied from underuse. And we don't like it's not like we don't have them. I think we all have them. It's just we're not using them. We don't know how to trust them. And then if we're looking around to our external environment and nobody's telling us that this is okay, then we're like, well, nobody else is doing it. And I think I'm crazy. So it's just a matter of like the continual, like anything you want to be good at, you got to keep repeating it, right? So practicing leaning into the emergence, or practicing, like to your point about the emotions, like, yeah, I'm going to feel my feelings. I'm not going to stuff them way deep down inside because like we've all, for the therapy generation, we know that shit doesn't work, but I'm also not going to let it like define me for the next, months or 5 years or whatever either. I'm going to acknowledge it. And then I'm going to say, can this serve me right now? Do I need to come back to this? Like, right? It's all practice so that we get stronger.
It's a practice so that we get stronger, but we also have to recognize that when you invest in yourself, whether it's in the time that you're doing this or the ways that you are recognizing and reflecting and receiving your own guidance, that you're also giving yourself feedback. That's another thing that I see a lot of my women vacate on, where they're in this beautiful space and they're in this like wonderful understanding of the feminine, but then they're not reflecting on how did that actually feel for me though? And so there's this depletion over time of like, gosh, I remember what it was like when I was in that space. I know that I could do these things, but am I avoiding that? And that's another question of that discernment. Because again, that discernment and of understanding your feminine quality or light in the world. I see every woman as a frequency of
Mm.
light, and every single color is completely different. There are so many colors. It's so beautiful. It's so many colors. And it's not mine to pull out the color necessarily. It's mine just to notice that it's dimming in a certain way. Why? And ask them why. And
Yeah.
if you don't have that power in your own circle, whether it's Liz or whether it's somebody else that you turn to that you're having this understanding with, you
Yeah.
may miss it, and you may say that it's structure and that it's fueling you. But until you really have the sisterhood and understanding, like, oh, but is it? You might be swimming too deep. And you don't want to get to that place where you're about a foot from the surface and you need that air to this point where you're just gasping with everything you have.
Yeah.
Because in business, that will kill you.
Totally. Yes. And then we end up in that place of like full on retreat, right? We're like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm going to, yep, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. And then we're going to hide off in the side pool and be like, nope, I can't get back in the stream because that's not for me. Totally.
Yes. Yes.
But I'm wanting to share this story that y'all, if you're listeners to the podcast, sorry, I've probably told it before. And I feel like I've told all my stories, but it's coming up because it's the idea of the structure and letting the feminine lead. Um, and so I'm wanting to just presence it here. The woman that designed the cover of my book, Arla Patch, was a guest on my show a couple of years ago. Incredible artist. But she also was very involved with the Truth and Reconciliation campaign in Maine to investigate the deaths of Native children in, I believe, boarding schools, but under state supervision. Such a beautiful activist. And she told a story to me. I don't know if she told it on the podcast, but I know that she told a story to me about, she's a white woman, but as an ally, she was, and through her work, she was invited into an Indigenous ceremony. And in the Indigenous ceremony, it was all led by women, and the men were holding the space. The men were like holding the sacred container around the women so that they could do their work. And she said when she saw it, she burst into tears because she'd never seen anything like it in her life. She'd never seen men holding space for women in that way. That's a whole different conversation we could have. But metaphorically, like energetically, this is what I think we're speaking about. It's like we pull in the masculine. And yes, I want to acknowledge, like, we're not getting into gender essentialism here, like all of this. There's a whole lot of stuff that can be unpacked around this. But if we're speaking in these energetic terms, it's the feminine that's holding the vision, that has the bigger picture, and the masculine that's like, I trust you. I trust your vision. So I'm going to put the structure around the vision so that it comes into reality. Yes?
Amen. I mean, so your body is the compass, right? So when you're making decisions, you can feel what your body is telling you. If that yes feels expansive and that feminine feeling, you have to create space around understanding where that's coming from. Whereas a no might feel like for you, like energetic withdrawal. Know the difference between where that confidence is coming in or where there's just lack of structure in the understanding of how you'd like to deliver this. And sometimes that just speaks to exactly what you need to know, right? In conversations and or meetings, just to give like some like constructive juiciness for some of your listeners, practice that full presence. Slow down a second. I was in this meeting with this investor who came in and was telling me exactly how I needed to be. Laughing. I was giggling like a schoolgirl on the inside, but I couldn't show it at that time just for professional understanding. So I was grounding myself through my feet. I was breathing in my belly. And once he was done with his like little dissertation or whatever, I excused myself to freshen up in the ladies' room to come back and grab a bottle of water. And I said, I'm sure you understand. I didn't get a sense to get settled yet. So he goes into this dissertation. Picture this inside of a meeting. This man is like, blah, 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 blah. You need to be doing this. You need to be, these are the numbers I need to be seeing. And the ROI, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, sounds great. I'm going to go grab a bottle of sparkling water. Do you guys want anything? And just, I'm going to freshen up for a second. I'll come right back. And he's looking at me like, how dare you leave this right now? You should be feeling pressure. I go to the bathroom, I'm doing some yoga, I'm like stretching out a little bit, come back out. People understand the difference when you're performing versus you're very present.
Yes.
And I came in and I said, some of the things I'm hearing you say are these things. But before we even get there, if I keep on pushing this female leader in that way, and I understand you want an ROI, I understand that these things are important to you, and I exhaust her and I break her like a wild horse into a racehorse, and I constrict all of this feeling, how long do you think we'd be able to run? A month, 2 months, 3 months? Versus if you let go for a second from the training that you are doing and you recognize that she requires certain pieces here. I'm not going to speak for her right now. I'm going to let her, she's the owner. I'm going to let her advocate for herself in a second, but like that magnetic understanding of herself versus this very aggressive tactic that you're positioning, I think is going to be much more fruitful for you over a longer period of time. What do you think? And he says, I appreciate that you listened to me. I think I'm really frustrated right now. And I said, fully receive that. I understand.
Mhm.
And thank you for being honest with me. I really understand that. And the reason you're frustrated is because you've been doing a lot of that and none of this. So if you can let off the reins a little bit and trust me, give me a quarter. And I came back with a 28% increase in their business after a quarter where she was working less and doing so much more impact, but working on average about 15 hours less per week. And she was refreshed. She comes to the meeting. You could see this glow in her. And I said, "Hey, do you mind just giving him an update on like how you're feeling, just in your body, what's coming up for you from a leadership perspective?" And she was like, "Gosh, I can read energy, I can read emotion in business, and I can see it as intelligence. I can see these pieces. I'm leading through connection and authentic relationships. I'm not being brash and reactive with people. People are coming to me in a more safe space." And I looked at him and I was like, "So how's the ROI on that? 28% increase, and she's understanding herself." So when you're in this space of a big portfolio meeting or a big meeting where you feel like you want to throttle ahead, take a second, grab yourself a big sparkling water, not the small ones, a big one. Go stretch yourself out, shake yourself out, reset yourself, come back to it and build through your authenticity. It's not something that has to be hierarchy. It's not something that has to look like everybody else's. It can look uniquely like yourself. Ask genuine connections. Trust the ways that you vulnerably are hearing the sacred, and build yourself through that, because that reflection and that essence of you, the effervescence of you is so needed in the world.
Love that. And I was just about to ask you, like, okay, so if women are listening to this and they're like, oh my God, how do I get from here to there where she's talking about, you just answered it, which is great. And I think one thing that I want to tack on there too, because I've noticed it in myself, is I think as women, a lot of times we are waiting for permission, which is part of the patriarchal paradigm. Like, like it's been passed on. We can talk about epigenetics or whatever. Like it's just been part of the paradigm for thousands of years. Like we are waiting for someone to say, it's okay for you to take a step out and to center yourself, or it's okay for you to take this space. And I do think, depending on your job and your career, like whatever, figuring out where you can wiggle is, I don't know, like that's a journey for each woman to figure out on her own, but asking that question first, like, am I waiting for permission, and do I actually need it to take the thing that I need right in this moment, is so important. And so just doing the thing like you just named, because I think there could be like, oh, well, I can't leave a meeting. Well, sure you can. I mean, if you're puking, you could leave. If, your child was dying, you could leave. You know what I mean? Like you can exit. You are allowed. You're allowed to take that space.
Absolutely. I don't care. And this might be my grandmother's side to me, but like if you're in corporate or if you're in a job like you're saying here, there are certain things that you can consider the ways that you could say this, right? Like, it's not a yes for me yet. Can you perhaps tell me a little bit more about how else I could get there? Um, my plate is full right now with what I've already committed to, but I'm really excited to bring what I have to the table in a way that's really, really enriched and proud. Or, I think that sometimes when you say something along the lines of like, that's just not aligned with my priorities, there's different ways to say things if you can slow down and actually hear yourself. But when you
Yes.
actually feel your body relaxed, when you have the stability of eye contact, and I want you to think about the most radiant woman in the room. Next time you go out to dinner, or take yourself out to dinner, damn it, go just scan the room and notice who is not on their phone and just embodied in themselves. When you have this ability to sit on the throne in a way where you know who the bleep you are, there is no apology for it, because again, you are in this beautiful color spectrum. that you are shining inside of that. And that is a wonderful feeling to feel. And you do not need anybody's understanding for that. If they do not understand that, they're gonna have to go to their manager and figure out how to talk about that. That's none of my business. I don't need to baby somebody to figure out how they need to speak to me. The other side of that is that the more you can practice being in your throne versus being in a rocking chair is very important, because as soon as you find yourself in that rocking chair, you are creating this emotional caretaking of another person. And I'm sorry, but I don't care. It's none of my business. That is their path. And why
Yes.
would I step into that? So I really want you to think about that too, because I think power isn't necessarily in the exact words, it's in the energy that you have behind them. And when you are truly centered in business and knowing who you are, a simple no thanks
Yeah.
carries an authority, because there's no wobble in the ways that you're saying that. I'm not in this like rocking chair. You're in a throne, baby. Embody it.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that. We're totally gonna run out of time. I knew it was gonna happen. And I have lots of questions for you, but I'm really wanting to ask this one, and I think it's too big for the end, but I'm just gonna throw it out there anyways and ask you with your grace and wisdom and the feminine flowing through you to answer it in a way that we can just kind of but I'm really interested in, because I see this, I've seen it in myself and heard it from other women, their relationship with money and like the sacredness of money. I know it's a huge, like we could just spend like an hour talking about this, right? But like that sort of getting into the side pool of the feminine can sometimes like totally, because I do think it wakes us up to like, well, this whole thing is this capitalist bullshit. Like it's all, exploitive, and like look at what it's done to the earth, and like, like, and we want to be done with it all together, right? And no, I know you don't feel that way, but but like I wonder if you could just talk to that, like how you see money and like, you know, how women can really hold that relationship in a way that's in alignment with the feminine. It doesn't feel like I'm working against my core values or whatever.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, one of the things I'm going to say here is that money is simply an exchange of energy. It has nothing to do. I understand that people have a certain idea of like capitalistic or destroying the world, blah 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 blah. But like at the end of the day, when most women are much better at giving than receiving. We have to stop that immediately. Practice receiving. It complements this part of you without deflecting it. Accept the help, accept the dollar amount, accept the pouring in. Because this is something that instead of continuing to offer it, offer it, offer it, it speaks to that emotional caretaking. So I love that you just brought this up in the relationship of that, because being able to approach money and maybe think about this as a relationship, right? In a relationship, how do you want to feel with your partner? In a relationship, how do you want your partner to feel about you? Money is no different, but we make it out to be this monster. And so when you cultivate this appreciation for the ways that you are in a way useful, right? This usefulness is love in action. And when you're useful, you're participating in this web of connection that holds everything together ultimately. And so when we vacate our responsibilities in that web of connection that holds everything together, I mean, the richest woman in the world just purchased a med school and made med school free. Damn girl, go with your damn self. It's delicious.
Is that
And
Maureen Powell
there's
job?
there's actually 2 women that did this
Okay.
recently, and it's not hitting major news outlets. Why? Because if all of the men start looking at the ways that women are creating this, there's one in New York and there's one down south, and I forget exactly where down south that was, but that is a sacred exchange. That means that there is something that you have that is worth exchanging. I'm going to put money into this, and I'm going to make more doctors that value the impact that medicine has in a differentiated way. What did she also include inside of that? Massage therapy, functional medicine, other pieces that are non traditional medicine. And it isn't about how it's being used, it's about the way that it's being worthy of being called upon in that way of understanding herself. And she chose that. And then all of these other people started coming out into the woodwork, from the woodwork, who were saying how, well, this came from X, Y. I don't care where it came from. I think it matters what she did with it that is igniting that next level of creativity. And
Yes.
so I want us to think about, instead of this martyrdom, why does everything need to come from me? How amazing it is that I have gifts that people can receive. And that energy completely shifts from this victim mentality to this way of creative energy, which is truly the essence of the feminine. So I think your skills, your insights, your presence matters, and being able to be a part of that web of impact is such a fruitful space. That's care that's made tangible. And so I'm a hell yes on understanding money energy. I could do an entire deep dive of that,
I bet.
but
Okay.
I
You'll have to come back and we'll do like a whole thing on this.
yeah.
Oh my God. This is so fun. I feel so energized. I'm going to put it in the show notes, but Rebecca, if you want to tell people anything, like how to find you, yeah, hit us.
Mm, Pretty easy to find. It's at Rise Reign Rule, reign like a queen, REIGN. And we named it that way actually because the rise is the masculine, the reign is the feminine. The rule is how you manage the two of them, the yin and the yang.
Love it.
So if you go to www.riseandroll.com or you find me on Instagram, I do try to answer all of my Instagram messages. I have over 100,000 followers. So if you message me once and I do not respond to you, please do not take it personally. Keep on messaging me, girl, because I do want to chat with you. And I do personally answer most of those messages. If my assistant snags it before me, she'll give you a booking link. And we can chat. If you go to my website, you can book a complimentary call if you ever just want to chat about whatever is coming up for you. Happy to receive you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for making this happen. It's such a joy to know you, and I feel like your energy is so infectious, and I'm so glad I got to share it in this space with my listeners today. So thank you so much for your time, Rebecca.
Like I said to you when we were offline, you are like a juicy peach on a summer day. It is just such a um, beautiful space to be in with you, Liz. And I love the work that you're doing. I think that more people need you in this space to really harness that. And so I love that you're out here and speaking to it. And I'm excited for you to hit that $1 million
Oh
mark.
my God, thank you so much. I love it. I love it. It's the sisterhood, ladies, like we're talking about, like all the energy. It's so good. Oh my God. Thanks to all of you for listening, as always, for tuning in. I mean, I'd probably do it without you, but it's easier to get people on the show to talk to me because you're listening. I'm grateful for you. If you like the show, please do subscribe, share this with somebody else who needs this, and follow it for sure. Oh, leave a good review. That's the third thing. Yeah, give it a good review. You can just click some stars, but if you want to write some stuff, I like to see it. And until next time, take such good care of yourselves, and I'll be back again with you very soon.